The piercing shriek cut through the sterile silence of Metropolitan General Hospital's pediatric ward like a knife through paper. Bella, the vibrant green African-grey parrot perched in her ornate cage near the nurse's station, had never made such a sound before. Her usually cheerful chirps had turned into desperate, almost human-like cries that echoed through the pristine white corridors. "Baby! Baby! Help, baby!" Bella screeched, her intelligent dark eyes fixed on something that made her feathers ruffle with distress. Diana Martinez paused in her medication rounds, her elegant features creased with concern. In her many years as a pediatric nurse, she had learned to pay attention to unusual signs, and Bella had become something of an unofficial mascot for the ward. The beautiful parrot had been donated by a grateful family whose child had recovered from a rare condition, and her presence had brought joy to countless young patients and their families. But this wasn't joy. This was pure panic. "What's wrong, Bella?" Diana approached the cage, her long auburn hair catching the fluorescent light as she bent down to examine the agitated bird. Bella's response was to screech even louder, her claws gripping the bars as she pointed her beak toward the emergency stairwell at the end of the corridor. The door was slightly ajar, which was unusual since it was supposed to remain locked for security purposes. Diana's heart began to race. Something was terribly wrong. Down the hall, Dr. Theodore Blackwell emerged from his office, his tall frame moving with practiced efficiency despite the slight tremor in his hands. Theodore was known throughout the hospital as a brilliant physician, with striking silver hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through people. His reputation was impeccable, his success rate legendary, and his dedication to his patients seemingly unwavering. But today, something was different. His usually immaculate white coat was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. He moved past Diana without his usual warm greeting, heading directly toward the stairwell where Bella continued her frantic warnings. "Dr. Blackwell!" Diana called after him, but he didn't respond. He simply pushed through the stairwell door and disappeared from view. Bella's cries intensified. "Baby crying! Baby crying! Help!" The parrot's vocabulary was extensive, learned from months of listening to the conversations around the ward, but Diana had never heard her string together such specific, urgent phrases. The bird's distress was palpable, and it was contagious. Other nurses began to gather around the station, drawn by the commotion. Helena Rodriguez, the head nurse, arrived with her characteristic grace and authority. Despite being well into her career, Helena maintained the kind of natural beauty that turned heads, with dark, expressive eyes and silver-streaked hair that she wore in an elegant bun. Her presence usually calmed any situation, but even she seemed perplexed by Bella's behavior. "How long has she been like this?" Helena asked, her voice carrying the slight accent of her heritage. "About 20 minutes, Diana replied, glancing toward the stairwell, "and Dr. Blackwell just went through that door. He seemed off." Helena's expression darkened. She had worked with Theodore for several years and had always respected his medical expertise, but lately she had noticed subtle changes in his behavior. He had become more secretive, more isolated, and there had been whispered concerns about his personal life. "Baby alone, baby alone," Bella continued her desperate cries, now pacing back and forth in her cage. Elena Santos, a young nurse with kind brown eyes and a gentle demeanor, approached the group. "I just checked all the rooms on this floor," she reported. "All the babies are accounted for, and safe with their families." This should have been reassuring, but it only made Bella's behavior more puzzling. If all the babies on the ward were safe, what was causing such distress? The answer came from an unexpected source. Gabriel Morrison, the hospital's head of security, appeared at the nurses' station, his usually calm demeanor replaced by visible concern. Gabriel was a former military man whose commanding presence and genuine care for the hospital's patients and staff had earned him universal respect. "We have a situation," he announced quietly. "Someone called in a report about crying coming from the basement storage area. Maintenance is saying they heard an infant, but that's impossible since there's nothing down there but supplies." Helena's face went pale. The basement storage area was accessible through the emergency stairwell, the same stairwell Dr. Blackwell had just entered. "Bella knows," Diana whispered, looking at the parrot with new understanding. "She's been trying to tell us." The group exchanged worried glances. Birds, especially intelligent species like African greys, had remarkably acute hearing and could detect sounds that humans might miss. If Bella was reacting to something in the stairwell or basement area, they needed to investigate immediately. "Gabriel, we need to check that basement," Helena decided. "Take Diana and Elena with you. I'll stay here and monitor the ward." As they prepared to investigate, none of them could have imagined what they were about to discover. Dr. Theodore Blackwell, the respected physician they all thought they knew, was hiding a secret so shocking that it would shake the very foundations of Metropolitan General Hospital. But Bella knew. Somehow the remarkable Parrot had detected what human ears had missed, and her desperate warnings were about to unveil a truth that would change everything. The stairwell door creaked as Gabriel pushed it open wider, with Diana and Elena close behind. The sound echoed ominously in the concrete shaft, and somewhere in the depths below, they could hear the faint sound that had triggered Bella's distress, the unmistakable cry of an infant in need. What they would find in that basement would reveal not just Theodore's devastating secret, but also uncover a web of pain, desperation, and ultimately redemption that none of them could have anticipated. The beautiful Parrot had become an unlikely hero, but the real story was just beginning to unfold. As they descended the stairs, each step taking them closer to the truth, Diana couldn't help but think about how many times she had passed Dr. Blackwell in these very corridors, never suspecting the burden he carried or the choice he was about to make that would define not just his character, but the very essence of what it meant to be human. The crying grew louder with each step, and Bella's warnings echoed in their minds like a prophecy, finally coming to pass. The basement of Metropolitan General Hospital was a labyrinth of concrete corridors and storage rooms that most staff members never had reason to visit. As Gabriel led Diana and Elena deeper into the maze, the sound of crying became unmistakably clear, the desperate wails of a newborn infant echoing off the cold walls. "This way," Gabriel whispered, following the sound through a narrow hallway lined with supply closets. His hand instinctively moved to his radio, but something made him hesitate. If Dr. Blackwell was involved in whatever they were about to discover, rushing in with backup might not be the right approach. The crying led them to a heavy metal door marked Storage Room C7. Gabriel placed his ear against the cold surface and heard not just the infant's cries but also the unmistakable sound of a man's voice, soft, broken, and filled with anguish. "I'm sorry," the voice was saying. "I'm so sorry, little one. I never meant for any of this to happen." Diana's breath caught in her throat. It was Dr. Blackwell's voice, but she had never heard him sound so vulnerable, so utterly destroyed. Gabriel carefully turned the handle, finding the door unlocked. What they discovered inside would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Dr. Theodore Blackwell sat hunched over in the corner of the small storage room, his expensive suit jacket discarded, and his usually perfect appearance disheveled. In his arms, wrapped in what appeared to be hospital blankets, was a tiny infant, no more than a few days old. The baby's cries had weakened to soft whimpers, and Theodore was gently rocking back and forth, tears streaming down his face. "Dr. Blackwell?" Diana stepped forward cautiously, her nursing instincts immediately assessing the situation. The baby appeared to be in distress, possibly dehydrated, and definitely in need of immediate medical attention. Theodore looked up with startled, red-rimmed eyes. For a moment he seemed disoriented, as if he had been lost in his own private hell and suddenly thrust back into reality. "Diana," he whispered, his voice cracking, I didn't know what else to do." "Whose baby is this, Theodore?" Gabriel asked firmly, but not unkindly. He had seen enough human suffering in his military service to recognize a man at the end of his rope. Theodore's shoulders shook as fresh tears fell. "Her name was going to be Sarah, her mother." He couldn't finish the sentence, overcome by emotion. Elena knelt down beside him, her gentle nature overriding any fear or confusion. "Dr. Blackwell, this baby needs immediate care. Let us help." "You don't understand," Theodore said, clutching the infant closer. "I've ruined everything. I've destroyed so many lives, and now I've failed her too." Diana crouched down to Theodore's level, her beautiful face filled with compassion rather than judgment. "Tell us what happened. We're here to help, not to condemn." The story that emerged was heartbreaking in its complexity. Clara Patterson, a young woman with striking features and an infectious smile, had arrived at the hospital several days earlier in active labor. She was alone, having been abandoned by her partner when he learned of the pregnancy. With no family and no support system, she had been terrified and desperate. Theodore had been the attending physician, and something about Clara's situation had struck him deeply. Perhaps it was her courage in facing such a frightening situation alone, or maybe it was the way she looked at him with such trust and hope, despite having been let down by so many others. She was so brave, Theodore whispered, his voice barely audible. Even in labor, even scared and alone, she kept asking if the baby would be healthy. That's all she cared about, that her daughter would be okay. The delivery had been complicated. Clara had developed severe complications. During birth, and despite Theodore's best efforts, and those of the entire medical team, she had begun to hemorrhage uncontrollably. In those critical moments, as they fought to save her life, baby Sarah had been born, healthy and perfect, but into a world that was rapidly losing her mother. "We tried everything," Theodore continued, his professional composure completely shattered. "Every procedure, every medication, but the bleeding wouldn't stop. In her final moments, Clara grabbed my hand and begged me to make sure her daughter would be loved. She made me promise that Sarah wouldn't end up in the system, bounced from foster home to foster home like she had been." Eleanor felt tears welling up in her eyes. "So you took her?" Theodore nodded miserably. "I signed the death certificate for both mother and child. I told everyone that the baby hadn't survived the complications, but Sarah was perfect, healthy, beautiful. I couldn't let her disappear into a system that had failed her mother so completely." Gabriel's expression softened as he began to understand the magnitude of Theodore's anguish. "But then what? You couldn't just take her home." "That's when everything fell apart," Theodore admitted. "I realized I had no plan, no way to care for her properly. I'm not a father. I've devoted my entire life to medicine. I live alone in a sterile apartment, work 16-hour days. What did I know about raising a child?" The weight of his impulsive decision had crushed him. For days he had been caring for baby Sarah in secret, using his access to the hospital to provide her with formula and medical care, but keeping her hidden away from the world. The stress and guilt had been eating him alive. "I thought about taking her to social services," Theodore said, "but every time I tried I remembered Clara's words. She had grown up in the system. Foster homes where she was just another burden, group homes where she was just a number. She begged me not to let that happen to Sarah." Diana gently reached out and touched the baby's tiny hand. "But you can't keep her hidden forever. She needs proper care, documentation, a real life." "I know," Theodore whispered. "That's why I brought her down here today. I was going to—" He couldn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear and horrifying. Eleanor gasped. "You were going to abandon her? I was going to leave her where someone would find her quickly," Theodore clarified, though the distinction provided little comfort. "Somewhere safe, where she'd be discovered and taken care of properly. I thought if I disappeared from her life completely, she'd have a chance at the normal childhood her mother wanted for her." Gabriel shook his head slowly. "Theodore, that's not solving anything. That's just creating more trauma. Don't you think I know that?" Theodore's voice cracked with anguish. "Do you think this is easy for me? I've held her every night, fed her, watched her sleep. She looks at me with such trust, and I know I'm about to betray that just like everyone betrayed her mother." It was then that Diana realized the full scope of the tragedy. Theodore wasn't a villain. He was a good man who had made an impossible choice in an impossible situation. His medical oath to do no harm had collided with the harsh realities of a system that often failed the most vulnerable. "There has to be another way," Diana said firmly. "Clara wanted her daughter to be loved, right? Look at yourself, Theodore. Look at how you're holding her, how you've cared for her. You already love her." Theodore's tears fell onto the baby's blanket. "Love isn't enough, Diana. I don't know how to be a father. I don't know how to give her the life she deserves." Gabriel stood up slowly, his mind working through the complexities of the situation. "What if you didn't have to do it alone?" Eleanor looked up at him with curiosity. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if there was a way to make this legal? To give Sarah the loving home her mother wanted, while also giving Theodore the support he needs?" Diana felt a spark of hope. Adoption, but not through the traditional system. Private adoption with Theodore as the adoptive father. "But the paperwork," Theodore protested weakly. "The death certificate, the lies. I've committed fraud, potentially kidnapping. My medical license, my career, everything would be destroyed." Helena's voice suddenly echoed from the stairwell above. "Diana, Gabriel, is everything all right down there?" The moment of truth had arrived. They could no longer keep this secret contained to their small group. But as they looked at Theodore holding baby Sarah, seeing the genuine love and desperation in his eyes, they all realized that sometimes the right thing to do isn't the easy thing. "We'll figure it out," Diana promised, her voice filled with determination. "Together. But first, we need to get Sarah proper medical attention, and then we need to tell Helena everything." Theodore looked up at her with a mixture of hope and terror. "You won't let them take her away?" "Not if we can help it," Gabriel assured him. "But we need to do this right, legally and ethically. No more secrets, no more lies." As they prepared to face the consequences of Theodore's desperate actions, none of them could have predicted how this crisis would transform not just their own lives, but the entire culture of Metropolitan General Hospital. Baby Sarah's story was about to become a catalyst for change, and Bella the parrot had been the unlikely hero who started it all. The journey ahead would be complicated, filled with legal challenges and ethical dilemmas, but it would also reveal the incredible power of human compassion and the lengths people will go to protect the innocent. When Helena descended into the basement and saw the scene before her, her first instinct was to call security and report the situation immediately. But as Diana quickly explained the circumstances, and she looked into Theodore's anguished eyes while he held baby Sarah, something shifted in her perspective. "My God, Theodore," Helena whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "What have you done?" "I tried to save her," Theodore replied simply, his voice barely audible. "Just like I tried to save her mother." Helena knelt beside the group, her experienced eyes immediately assessing baby Sarah's condition. "She needs fluids and proper care, but she appears stable." She looked up at Theodore with a mixture of compassion and concern. "But we need to handle this properly. No more secrets." Gabriel cleared his throat. "I may have an idea, but it's going to require all of us working together." Over the next several hours, an extraordinary plan began to take shape. Helena, using her decades of experience and connections within the hospital's administration, quietly reached out to Marcus Webb, the hospital's chief administrator. Marcus was known for his integrity and his commitment to doing what was right, even when it wasn't easy. When Marcus learned of the situation, his first reaction was shock, followed quickly by deep concern for all involved. "This is incredibly complex," he admitted, as they gathered in his office late that evening, baby Sarah finally receiving proper medical care in a private room. "Theodore has committed serious violations, but his motivations..." "His motivations were pure," Diana interjected. "He saw a dying mother's plea and tried to honor it." Marcus nodded slowly. "I believe that. But we need to find a legal path forward that protects everyone, especially baby Sarah." The solution came through Elena's connection to the hospital's legal counsel and social services department. Rather than pursuing criminal charges, they worked with authorities to create a path that would address the legal issues while prioritizing Sarah's welfare. Theodore voluntarily surrendered his medical license temporarily and agreed to undergo counseling and training in childcare. In exchange, the hospital would support his application to become Sarah's legal guardian through proper channels, with the understanding that he would have a comprehensive support system in place. But the most surprising development came from an unexpected source. Clara Patterson, Sarah's mother, had actually mentioned Theodore by name in a journal she had kept during her pregnancy. In her final entry, written just before going into labor, she had written, "If anything happens to me, I hope Dr. Blackwell will remember his promise to help. He has kind eyes and a good heart." This journal, discovered among Clara's few possessions, provided crucial evidence that Theodore's actions, while legally questionable, were consistent with the mother's expressed wishes. The hospital's board of directors, led by Marcus, made an unprecedented decision. Rather than terminating Theodore's employment, they offered him a new position as coordinator of the hospital's newly created family support program, a role that would help other families in crisis situations like Clara's. "You have a gift for caring," Helena told Theodore as they finalized the arrangements. "You just need to learn how to channel it properly." Theodore's transformation over the following months was remarkable. With Sarah legally in his care and a support network of colleagues who had become like family, he discovered a capacity for love and nurturing he never knew he possessed. Diana, Eleanor, Gabriel, and Helena all took turns helping him learn the basics of childcare, creating an extended family around Sarah that her mother could never have imagined. The hospital itself was changed by Sarah's story. The new family support program that Theodore eventually led helped countless families navigate medical crises with proper resources and support. Social services partnerships were strengthened, and protocols were established to ensure that no patient would ever feel as alone and desperate as Clara had felt. But perhaps the most endearing transformation was in Bella, the African grey parrot whose warnings had started it all. Sarah became a regular visitor to the pediatric ward, and Bella immediately adopted her as a special charge. The parrot learned to say, "Sarah safe," and "family love," phrases that brought smiles to everyone who heard them. Diana often marveled at how Bella had somehow sensed not just the immediate crisis, but the deeper emotional turmoil that had driven Theodore to such desperate measures. She knew he was in pain, Diana would tell visitors. Animals can sense these things in ways we can't always explain. As Sarah grew from an infant into a curious toddler, she became the unofficial mascot of Metropolitan General's pediatric ward. Her presence brought joy to young patients and their families, and her story inspired the creation of support programs that helped other families in crisis. Theodore, meanwhile, discovered that fatherhood suited him in ways he had never expected. His initial fears about not knowing how to be a parent proved unfounded. Love, it turned out, was indeed enough when combined with dedication, support, and the willingness to learn and grow. The legal issues were ultimately resolved through a combination of community service, Theodore's work with the family support program, and the testimony of colleagues who spoke to his character and motivations. The judge in the case, moved by the unique circumstances and the positive outcome for Sarah, allowed Theodore to keep his medical license with the understanding that he would continue his work helping other families. Helena, reflecting on the entire experience, often told new staff members, "Sometimes, the most important medical interventions happen not in the operating room, but in the moments when we choose to see each other's humanity and respond with compassion." Gabriel, whose military background had taught him to value honor and duty, found new meaning in his role at the hospital. "We protected and served that day," he would say, "not just baby Sarah, but the idea that good people sometimes make difficult choices for the right reasons." Eleanor's gentle nature and quick thinking had been crucial in helping Theodore feel safe enough to share his story. She continued to work in pediatrics, but with a new understanding of how complex family situations could be and how important it was to listen with both the heart and the mind. Marcus ensured that Sarah's story became part of the hospital's training programs, teaching new staff about the importance of comprehensive family support and the recognition that medical care extends far beyond treating physical ailments. Clara Patterson's journal was eventually published with Theodore's permission, becoming a powerful testimony to the struggles of single mothers and the importance of comprehensive support systems. The proceeds from the book went to fund the family support program that had grown from Sarah's story. And Bella, the remarkable parrot, continued her role as the ward's unofficial guardian, her sharp eyes and keen hearing always alert for any sign that someone might need help. She had saved more than just one baby that day. She had saved an entire family that didn't even know it existed yet. On Sarah's first birthday, the entire hospital celebrated. The little girl who had almost been abandoned in a basement storage room was now surrounded by more love and support than her mother could have ever dreamed possible. Theodore, holding his daughter while surrounded by his colleagues turned family, finally understood what Clara had meant when she begged him to make sure Sarah would be loved. "Family isn't just about blood," he said during the small celebration. "It's about choosing to care for each other, to show up when it matters, and to believe that love can overcome even the most impossible circumstances." As Sarah grew older, she would often visit Bella in the pediatric ward, chattering away in her toddler language, while the parrot listened with the same intense attention she had shown on that crucial day. It was as if Bella understood that she had played a vital role in bringing this family together, and she took her ongoing responsibility seriously. The story of baby Sarah, Dr. Theodore Blackwell, and Bella the parrot became legendary at Metropolitan General Hospital. It was a reminder that heroes come in all forms, sometimes as dedicated doctors who make impossible choices, sometimes as colleagues who choose compassion over judgment, and sometimes as a beautiful parrot whose warnings can save not just lives, but souls. In the end, Clara Patterson's dying wish had been fulfilled in ways she could never have imagined. Her daughter was not just loved, she was cherished by an entire community that had come together to ensure that no child would ever face the world alone. And somewhere in that achievement, everyone who had been part of Sarah's story found their own redemption and purpose. The hospital corridor that had once echoed with Bella's desperate warnings now rang with Sarah's laughter and the gentle sounds of a place where healing happened not just through medicine, but through the simple, powerful act of choosing to care for one another. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of captivating stories. I trust you found today's narrative as engaging as I did. If you enjoyed this exploration into fascinating and compelling narratives, kindly indicate your appreciation by liking this video. Are you watching on mobile? Show your appreciation with a double tap for hype. For more captivating stories and journeys into the heart of compelling storytelling, please subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Your thoughts and interpretations are most welcome. Please share your perspectives on today's story in the comments below. And if you believe others would find this content engaging, please consider sharing the video with your network. Until our next journey into the world of captivating tales, I bid you farewell.